My Gavana Melanin, I am very excited to do this video because I am somebody that has always done magic, but my magic comes from a natural place that Tolkien actually described the elves having as well. So they're not necessarily like witches, although you can be a witch and an elf, but elves have a different type of magic. And I am going to read to you the letters of Tolkien so you can understand a little bit more about where he was coming from with his perspective of what magic is. So let's take a look at Galadriel's quote about actually magic, because throughout Lord of the Rings and even the Silmarillion, there is ideas about magic going on and enchantments going on. But you never see the elves doing some kind of elaborate ritual and having an altar and performing magic spells. Their magic comes from a natural place, and this is a very abstract idea that I would like to give more clarity to, because this is how I do magic. This is how I would be considered more of a white witch rather than what others may partake in with witchcraft. If you are somebody that feels magical and you know that you yourself do magic, but you don't necessarily do the same kind of magic that Wicca or witchcraft teaches, then you may have more what is considered the elfin magic. So Gladriel says this. When Sam asks her about magic in general, this is what Gladriel says. For this is what your folk would call magic, I believe, though I do not understand clearly what they mean. And they seem to use the same word of the deceits of the enemy. But this, if you will, is the magic of Galadriel. Did you not say that you wished to see elf magic? So here we start to see there's a difference between the magic of humans or wizards or mages and the magic of elves. And here's a few other quotes from J.R.R. Tolkien. There is little or no magic about them, the elves, except the ordinary, everyday sort, which helps them to disappear quietly and quickly when large, stupid folk like you and me come blundering along, making a noise like elephants which they can hear a mile off. So he is talking about the elves and the fairies. Peter Jackson does a very good job of showing this. A lot of people have made fun of the idea that Galadriel seems to almost teleport and disappear, but he was trying to relay this type of idea that Galadriel didn't teleport. She simply was so quiet in her movements that she was able to slip away from the perception of Gandalf. This is what Tolkien was trying to show, is that they have an ordinary type of magic. It's not magical spells. It's simply utilizing the skills and the talents within that are inherent in all of us, but to an upteenth power where they have become so powerful within themselves that it almost seems like magic. And here's another Tolkien quote. What really happens is that the story maker proves a successful sub-creator. He makes a secondary world which your mind can enter. Inside it, what he relates is true. It accords with the laws of that world. You therefore believe it, while you are as it were inside. The moment disbelief arises, the spell is broken. The magic, or rather art, has failed. You are then out in the primary world, again looking at the little abortive secondary world from outside. And if we go to the book, The Letters from J.R.R. Tolkien, we can get a more interesting glimpse of his perspective on magic. So I want to read this. I have not used magic consistently, and indeed the Elven Queen, Galadriel, is obliged to remonstrate with the hobbits on their confused use of the word, both for the devices and operations of the enemy and for those of the elves. Now, Tolkien had a very interesting idea that magic, much like we understand in witchcraft today, it is almost neutral, so it can be used for good or for evil. And he often called the machine as part of way that sets the illusion about the world. And some people get so involved in this illusion that they start trying to dominate over others, and they bulldoze the real world, and they start coercing other wills. So the machine is related to magic, but it is different than the magic that comes from the elves, which is more of a natural type of magic that exists within nature, that exists when we are actually looking deep within ourselves and noticing our own kind of inner power that creates everything that we really want in our life. And sometimes we create unconsciously so what we necessarily need in order to learn and move up the ladder of consciousness and evolve ourselves. So here he says, I have not, because there is not a word for the latter, since all human stories have suffered the same confusion. But the elves are there in my tales to demonstrate the difference. So Tolkien has a loss of words to describe the type of magic that elves contained. It was not the same definition that some people use as what magic is. But this, I would say, is closer to more of a spiritual connection and connecting with all things and kind of tapping into the prime source and being able to utilize that information in order to do what they want to do and to be able to experience what they want to experience. It is an art form, and Tolkien has quoted that a couple of times, talking about the elven magic being an art. So here he goes on and he says, their magic is art. So the elves' magic is art, with a capital A, delivered from many of its human limitations, more effortless, more quick, more complete, product and vision in unflawed correspondence, meaning that elves had a way of having a vision in mind and immediately connecting and manifesting what it is that they wish to see. So they were more focused, they were more complete and more driven to the desired outcome that they wanted. They didn't suffer from self-doubt. They didn't suffer from ego identity starting to pull them into another direction. They were constantly connected and tapped in and were really focused. They are the examples of being a master over themselves. And its object is art, not power. Subcreation, not domination. And tyrannous reforming of creation. So it's not about dominating over others. It's not about being a tyrant over others. It is about solely connecting quickly to match the vision that they have in mind and producing the results that they wish to see and experience. It's very much like the idea of the secret, or what we know about in New Age, and the idea that our thoughts create our reality. Well, if your thoughts come from a very pure place that is not hindered by ego and self-doubt or anger or fear or things that are called back into our subjective experience. But if you are in that objective place of mind and you really are focused and you're really clear with your intent, you can do elven magic. And this is the type of magic that the elves had. It is not like witchcraft. It is a whole other different category of magic. The elves are immortal, at least as far as this world goes, and hence are concerned rather with the griefs and burdens of deathlessness in time and change than with death itself. The enemy in successive forms is always naturally concerned with sheer domination, and so the Lord of Magic and Machines. So this is Sauron, this is Melkor that entered into the physical form of Sauron. This is his version of what the devil represents in Christianity and in other types of Abrahamic religions. This is the way to describe the ego of man that decides to dominate over others without being self-aware enough to understand you are connected to others. Therefore, you should not want to dominate over them. There's nothing to control. And you each have your own spiritual journey and path to experience. And everything leads to the same destination of enlightenment and awakening to the idea that we all come from one source. This is the Elven magic. But the problem that this frightful evil can and does arise from an apparently good root, the desire to benefit the world and others, speedily and according to the benefactor's own plans, is a recurrent motive. I believe that Tolkien was referring to the idea because he was alive during World War II. He was actually in World War II as a soldier. He is referring to the idea that he saw Hitler kind of as this representative, where he was so concerned with dominating over others and producing this perfect race in his own mind. In his own mind, in Hitler's own mind, this meant a beneficial world for others and would produce a more peaceful or better environment. That was coming from his own mind, his subjective experience. And so the recurrent motive that we have in this world, and we have also in Lord of the Rings, is that coming from the subjective experience, not tapped into the collective, but only thinking about your own desires and your own visions, will cause you to be not aligned with others. And you may want to do things and make plans that actually benefit you and your ideas and your goals, but they actually don't benefit the others. So the trick is, and the elves were very good at this because they were tapped into that universal source of everything, the trick is to be in an objective place of observation and to make plans from there, to look at the whole as a collective and see what will truly benefit others, not leaving anybody out. Because when you come from the subjective mind, Hitler wanted to benefit only a certain amount of people, and he viewed other people as expendable, and they were just kind of throwaways. And by their sacrifice, by their Holocaust, because that's what the actual word Holocaust means, by their sacrifice, then it would benefit the world in the long run. And this is the wrong way of thinking. This is coming from the ego subjective without any type of connection to everything. And the goal is to have unity consciousness and connect to all beings and all souls in the universe. All right, let's move on. So that's how we understand a little bit about the magic. Now, here is another interesting part here. So Tolkien wrote to Naomi Mitchison, "I am afraid I have been far too casual about magic, and especially the use of the word, though Galadriel and others show by the criticism of the mortal use of the word that the thought about it is not altogether casual, but it is a large question, and difficult, and a story which, as you say so rightly say, is largely about motives, choices, temptations, etc. And the intentions for using whatever is found in the world could hardly be burdened with a pseudo-philosophical disquisition. I do not intend to involve myself in any debate whether magic, in any sense, is real or really possible in the world." So he didn't want to discuss the idea of, well, is magic really possible? Are magicians able to move things with their mind? And is what we think about magic, is it real? He didn't want to go into that. He wanted to show a difference between natural magic and something that is just more fake and put on in order to have domination over others and over their free will. But I suppose that for the purposes of the tale, some would say that there is a latent distinction, such as once was called the distinction between Magia and Goetia. Galadriel speaks of the deceits of the enemy well enough, but Magia was held good per se, and Goetia bad. Neither is, in this tale, good or bad per se, but only by motive or purpose or use. Both sides use both. And this is very true. So Goetia is the idea that you can call on other higher spirits and guides to move things in the physical world. And a lot of times it is connected to demons and people calling on demons to help them in this world. Not always, but Tolkien was trying to show that the elves use both the magic that we understand to move things with your mind and to make things appear out of seemingly nowhere, and the Goetia, which is where you call on a spirit, such as calling the horses out of the river during the time when the wraiths needed to be drowned. It was Glorfindel and Elrond in the book, and it was Arwen calling forth the water horses to drown the wraiths. So he was trying to show that there didn't need to be a way where people said, okay, well, magic is, this is white magic and this is good, and Goetia, which is more calling on spirits or summoning, helpers, is bad. He was trying to show, well, it actually could be both, depending on the soul who is actually doing the calling. Both sides use both, but with different motives. The supremely bad motive is, for this tale, since it is specially about it, domination of other free wills. The enemy's operations are by no means all goetic deceits, but magic that produces real effects in the physical world. But his magia he uses to bulldoze both people and things, and his Goetia is to terrify and subjugate. So Sauron, or Melkor's, they're both the same type of energy when we're talking about Lord of the Rings. So Sauron, according to the trilogy or the three-part movie, Sauron's Goetia was more of calling on mutated forms and summoning types of spirits, such as the Belrog and other types of spirits, to help him and aid him in his army of darkness that was gathering. You learn that when they talk about the necromancer, that is a sign of Goetia, where someone was trying to bring back the spirit that would then aid in the coming of his darker army. So that was the whole thing about the Nazgul weapon that they found and they were concerned about, is that is Goetia that is trying to raise the dead and play with necromancy in that kind of way and summon different types of spirits in order to gather together and to, kill and destroy everybody on Arda. So that, to Tolkien, is a motive or a purpose that is evil. Not necessarily the Goetia itself, but the actual individual intentions behind summoning those spirits. And then the magia is the idea of summoning things out of nowhere, such as Ungoliant in the Silmarillion, the giant spider that is actually related to Shelob, that's like the mother of Shelob. That giant spider then was it appeared out of nowhere, and it caused the Valar and the elves during that first age to have a very dark period for a while. And so that is his example, is that it's not bad necessarily to bring things forth from magic, but what makes it bad is how you use it. What is the intention? Are you bringing forth magic in order to take over and dominate over others? Or are you doing it to help heal and to help fight off evil that comes forward? So there's a difference there, and Tolkien knew that. And I think that is so wonderfully open-minded of this Catholic man. And this is why I consider him more of a mystical Christian or a mystical Catholic, because he was open-minded about things that are on the other side of the veil and are not necessarily just so concrete within their religion and the religious constructs of Christianity. But he was aware of this type of differentiation between magic that has existed in the human timeline for quite a long time. Their magia, the elves and Gandalf, used sparingly. A magia producing real results for specific beneficent purposes. So a lot of times you'll see Gandalf, he'll have his staff, and they'll be in a dark cave, and all of a sudden he can light it and cause the fire to light their way. That is an example to Tolkien that was beneficent for the fellowship. Their effects are entirely artistic and not intended to deceive. And I think Tolkien uses the word artistic in the idea that art is supposed to spread beauty. And so their type of magic is to spread beauty and to help others, to heal, and to benefit the groups that are around them. To Tolkien, that was art. They're entirely artistic and not intended to deceive. They never deceive, but may deceive or bewilder unaware men, since the difference is to them as clear as the difference is to us between fiction, painting, and sculpture and life. So he's saying that the elves and the wizards would never intentionally try to deceive or bewilder men, but that is a byproduct because men didn't have that sense of that natural magic. They didn't have that ability. So Tolkien was trying to show that they were completely innocent in using their magic and they were not trying to harm anybody or cause deceit. Anyway, a difference in the use of magic in this story is that it is not to be come by lore or spells, but it is in an inherent power, not possessed or attainable by men as such. Aragorn's healing might be regarded as magical, or at least a blend of magic with pharmacy and hypnotic processes. But it is in theory reported by hobbits who have very little notions of philosophy and science. So while Aragorn is not a pure man, but at long remove one of the children of Luthien. So there you have it. This is why Aragorn stands out a bit, and Tolkien did it on purpose to show that he is a long descendant from the children of Numenor and Luthien. So he had this type of a very small remnant of the natural magic within. Of course, his magic is not as powerful as Arwen's or any of the other elves, but Aragorn had that, and he was an example of man taking the best of mankind and mixing it well with the elven magic. And this is the elven magic. And some of you are maybe starting to understand that you are tapping into this elven magic yourself. I am, as I notice my reality forming around the thoughts that I wish to see and the experience that I wish to have. This is the elven magic, and it is far different than what you would think about as witches and cauldrons and altars and spells and lore, as Tolkien showed in his letters. He was trying to show a natural type of magic that people can tap in when they are not hindered by the limitations that are sometimes put on man. Now, if you want to get very religious about it, you can show that Tolkien was trying to show this is the way of being before the fall from grace, from the Garden of Eden, and man had that limitation because they came from the line of Adam, so they were limited and they were put on this earth, and it's a little bit of a struggle because it's a lower dimension than the Garden of Eden. And the elves symbolize a spirit that is really connected instantly to the Garden of Eden, so they don't suffer from the same type of fall from grace, and they don't hold onto that tainted sin within them. I believe that's just more of a metaphorical story to think about. But I also think that Tolkien was a visionary, and I believe that he was tapping into information to let humans know that as soon as you let go of the limitations that hold you back in your own life, and as soon as you let go of everything that keeps you in self-doubt and just denial of your innate power within, as soon as you let go of that, you will be able to master the art of natural magic, in which your visions will be quick to align to what it is that you will experience. But you'll be conscious creators instead of unconsciously so. You will always have a clear, direct purpose and a focus on what it is that you wish to see. And this is the Elven magic. So, Hannah for listening, and I will see you on the next video.